Hi, it's Anne-Marie Segal. I'm here talking about some concepts from Master the Interview, my book that's just come out. This is still the proof, as you see. I'm waiting for the final version, recording this in a few days in advance. Today, we're talking about weaknesses. Your weaknesses in the interview. If you turn to my book, yeah, I love that I'm able to say that. If you turn to my book, it sounds so professorial. In chapter 12, your weaknesses and other tough interview questions. I'm going to read you a little bit from the book. Again, something professors do, and it's entirely annoying when they do it in their class. The reason I'm doing it here is because I'd like you to get a chance to kind of see inside the book before you even have to buy it. And maybe you won't buy it. Maybe this will be enough to help you get over that hump. And that's great too, because I hope everyone benefits from this project of mine, not just people who are buying the book. But it's good to have like a little preview before you get into it. So, page 150, the weaknesses question. When I help clients prepare for interviews, this is almost invariably at the top of the list of questions that they are not prepared to answer. When they do have an answer, it is usually one of the, quote, top 3 answers to the question or some variation hereof or thereof. First, I am a perfectionist, i.e., my own toughest critic. Second, I work too hard, i.e., can't take a break, vacation, disconnect. 3, I am a people pleaser. So these are the 3 answers that people are most likely to give. And I'm not the only one to say this. In general, these are answers that are so overused in interviews that they're almost meaningless. I'm a people pleaser. So that means that I'm going to want to please you. It doesn't sound like a real weakness to some degree. I mean, it is, but it sounds like, or I'm a perfectionist. Oh, I always work so hard. Again, it's in service to the employer to have people who are perfectionists. Or I work too hard. I guess those 3 things all together sound like, well, it's not really a weakness. I've got this thing I'm calling a weakness, but it's actually truly a strength. You're not really showing any vulnerability. You're using a weakness that's been used so many times, as I said, that it's now kind of almost rendered meaningless. And you're not giving the interviewer any insight into who you are as a person. That's why these answers fail. That being said, it's really nerve-wracking, at least at first glance, to have to identify a weakness and share it with someone that you've never met. So I'll go first, because I'm sharing this with the world. Here's one of my own weaknesses. As someone who is very creative, I generate a lot of ideas, and it has taken me a long time to learn to pace myself. Sometimes I get excited about something and am a half hour into it before I realize I should be taking a different path. I have learned to relentlessly prioritize what truly needs to get done so I can meet my current obligations and have time to explore new ideas that may become long-term solutions. So I realize that is quite a mouthful in terms of you would not memorize that as a speech. But let me bring out the parts of it that are important and use this as an example for how you should answer this question. So I start by saying, I'm someone who's very creative. I generate a lot of ideas. So I'm starting to sound like a strength here, which you don't necessarily have to do, but there's an advantage to that. But then I say, it's taken me a long time to learn how to pace myself. Sometimes I get excited about something and I'm a half hour into it before I realize I should be taking a different path. If I were talking to a native English speaker, I would be talking about rabbit holes. I tried to make the book a little more inclusive and accessible, so I didn't use that word. The idea of going down a rabbit hole, I get an idea in my head and I want to pursue it to its logical conclusion. And sometimes that's distracting to me because I have to pull myself back and make sure I'm focusing on the task at hand and not getting off on those rabbit holes. It's a common problem for people. It's not necessarily something that you would think at first glance you would want to talk about in an interview. Then again, there are many reasons why that would really be authentic and true, and you could pull it off and make it a weakness that you could actually show self-awareness, as well as an ability to, if you can rein it in, turn it into a strength. So, and I'll do a little aside here. I have ADHD. I was diagnosed late in life. Not just kind of ADHD-ish, but actually. So if that applies to you, you know, this is actually true. You don't need to be out there with that with your interviewers. I also talk in this book a lot about being authentic, but not transparent. You don't need to be fully transparent to everyone ever. The extent of your weakness, right? And it over the years has caused me a lot of issues. It's why I didn't get straight A's in law school. And again, I still went to law school, so my what I was told when I was diagnosed is I have a warrior personality, and I pushed through anyway. Now, translating that back to what I put on the page here and how I might say it in an interview, because again, we're thinking about that "why should I hire you" question. We're not giving our deepest, darkest version of the weakness, but we're talking about it in the context that we would talk to a potential employer. So I've learned to relentlessly prioritize what truly needs to get done. So the way that I do this, I have a Remarkable, which is a tablet that you can write on. I do to-do lists nearly every day. I set alarms on my phone when I need to have meetings. I keep myself on track that way. Lots of lists and things. Relentlessly prioritize, but I still have that wish to go down a rabbit hole. And so, so I can meet my current obligations and have time to explore new ideas. And so the piece that I'm getting at there is I've learned to leave a little bit of time for myself to kind of draw or color outside the lines, they say. Again, that's a colloquialism, but what I mean by that is to experiment, to create, to innovate, and explore new ideas that may become long-term solutions. So what I'm communicating with this answer, and not all the other bits that I mentioned here, but what I said on the page here, creative, pace myself, relentlessly prioritize, and then give myself a chance to be creative and innovative. What I'm conveying is I am not a match for you, target employer, if you want someone who's just boom, 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 boom down the same track. That is not a good job for me. You know, just implement other people's ideas. I am a creative person. I have vision. I want to have some discretion to figure out how to implement my own ideas. Maybe they create long-term solutions that save us a ton of money or somehow impact the bottom line, the double bottom line, if you will. But it's a strength and it's also a weakness. But I lost my own thoughts there for a minute. Okay. And if you do that in an interview, just get back on track. So relentlessly prioritize. So that's what I've learned to do to overcome this weakness. Relentlessly prioritize. Sometimes it's called triage, borrowing the term from the medical community. What needs to get done first today? What needs to get done second? What needs to get done third? It doesn't mean that I always do it in exactly that order, but I make sure that I leave huge chunks of time to get the things done that really need to get done. And then give myself the space to go down a few of those rabbit holes if I think they're going to have some long-term benefit. So it's a long way to talk about this answer, which is clearly much shorter on the page here. But this gives you an idea of the background that might be going on for you as you try to chisel out or formulate an answer for yourself on the weaknesses question. So here are a few more examples of things, and I won't go into them in such depth as I did there. But if you do happen to get the book, turn to page 151. You'll see a range of other potential weaknesses that might trigger your own ideas. And I'm just going to go through them quickly. Delegation, not paying attention to office politics, being too specialized or too generalist, not knowing your way yet around corporate culture if you're a new grad, being the only person in your company historically who's focused on a certain area of expertise, managing smaller teams of people, but not yet larger teams, having been unfocused a bit in your career, in your earlier career, so having jumped around a lot in your career and not having a clear career focus for the future, being very deadline driven, not being very good at public speaking, and maybe, for example, having too much experience in another industry and not as much in this industry. So all of these, I would say, I would try to communicate as historically, this has been a weakness for me. It's an ongoing thing that I'm working on. This is how I'm curing it. This is how I'm overcoming it or strategizing around it. And so you're showing that you're actually showing some vulnerability, as I said, but then that you are being very self-aware to how to overcome whatever weakness you do have. Now, you don't want to talk about something that goes to the heart of the job. I talked about my example. For public speaking, for example, if your job involves a lot of public speaking, clearly you don't want to say that's a weakness of yours. But if your job involves leadership and you continue to be wanting to be more and more in a leadership role, that might be something you could bring up, for example. Again, only if it's authentic. I'm not trying to give you a roadmap or recipes. I'm trying to help you generate your own ideas. But that might be something that you need to do, speak to larger and larger groups of people. And so therefore, what I'm doing to become better at public speaking is ... That's what you would be talking about in the interview. With the idea of you being the only person in the company with expertise in a certain area, you could say this may be a weakness, especially in this context, if you're moving into a place where there's a team where there are a lot of people with that expertise, because it means you've got certain gaps in your learning potentially, because you've had to really do it all yourself and be the one-stop shop. Anything that you come up with as a weakness, my God, you're not going to like what I'm about to say, but I would have a backup weakness, because it might be that once you say it, you find that it didn't really sound like a weakness. If you've done enough work prepping yourself for the interview, you can be practicing delivering your weakness a few times. Find some folks to try it out on and see if it falls flat, if it sounds like, yeah, I'm not really giving enough for it to be a weakness. And if I had to give enough information for someone to understand why it's a weakness, I would be going to the heart of the job, as I said, and really, excluding myself as a qualified candidate. So try something else out. When I work with people on interview prep, we often go through, okay, so what are the top 3 or 4 things that you could say as a weakness? And let's ferret out which one of those is the best answer to give. So I hope this has been helpful. Like I said, whether or not you do get a copy of the book, and if you do, please write a review, an honest review, because I love having reviews. I'm not very good at self-promotion myself, another weakness. So putting that out there, please add to the reviews of the book, especially if you have a favorable thing to say about it. But whether or not you've read the book or will read the book, I hope this has been helpful in you thinking about how to formulate your answer to the weaknesses question. Good luck with all of your interviews.